And welcome back to Bengal Bites, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from one fan's real, honest perspective. I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 58. This is the Week 5 preview episode, where the Baltimore Ravens are coming in to take on the Cincinnati Bengals in what will be the Bengals' first AFC North divisional game of the year. The first 4 games were supposed to be the easy part of their Bengals' 4th place AFC North divisional schedule. But now the real test starts with Baltimore and these Ravens, who are looking like a very difficult team. But we're going to break it all down in this episode, talk about what we expect to see in this game, some of the interesting things that have been going on with both of these teams, some matchups to be on the lookout for this Sunday, and some other developments and transactions and things that are going on in terms of injuries. Some players are going to be coming back, very critical players, or some players who are dealing with injury throughout the week. Some other roster news that was going on, and news about how the media is going to be able to have access to the locker room. So all that and more in this episode of Bengal Bites. So, like we talked about, first win of the season came last week against the Carolina Panthers. And that's all well and good, but as we know, the Panthers are not a true great NFL team. I guess they played like a competent NFL team last week for one of the rare occasions in this Panthers franchise history, recent history. And the Bengals got the win, but it was really a case of best case outcome for everyone involved. In terms of Bengals got the win, Bengals fans were happy about that. But then when I watched like Panthers podcast, they were like, yeah, we lost, but it wasn't that bad. Like, it was pretty good for a Panthers game. They're like, if we could lose games like that, I'd feel pretty good about this team. So everybody from both sides, it was a remarkable game where both fan bases came away feeling good at the end of the game. The team that won felt good, obviously, for the Bengals, and the team that lost also felt good. Normally, if one team feels great, the other team feels terrible. Somehow, the Panthers also felt good, which is not a good sign. You want to leave the opponent, leave no doubt, oh, we crushed those guys, totally wipe the floor with them. But if they leave feeling like, they beat us, but we hung in there, it's like, didn't really win as decisively as they could have. And in the Bengals post-game locker room, every time a team wins, it's kind of, it's an expectation now of every team on social media posts in the locker room after the game. Oh, the coach giving out the game balls, right? You see every coach, oh, game ball to you, son bitch, game ball to you. F that guy and F this guy and you, mother effer, are getting the game ball too. You see that? So the Bengals post game, honestly, was one of the least inspirational, least fired up locker rooms I'd ever seen after a win in the National Football League. They're like, all right, guys, we beat the Panthers. All right, let's sing Who Dey and get the F out of here. It was like, I know the singing the Who Dey is got to be kind of cheesy and corny for some of these guys, especially, I don't know how it hits with like new players on the team where you sing the Who Dey, who they think gonna beat the Bengals. Nobody. It's fun for fans, but as players, I don't know how much they fully embrace it. So the whole Who Dey chant in the locker room after the game, after the win, didn't get me totally fired up. But it's neither here nor there. I'm just saying, I don't think that was necessarily a turning point. I think everybody on the team understood it was an expectation to beat the Panthers. If they didn't beat the Panthers, something was seriously wrong. So, okay, we took care of business. Great. Now is when the real test is going to begin with teams like the Panthers, who just came off of a Sunday night game last Sunday against the Bills, where they left no doubt that they were the better team. They totally, the Bills hung in it. They got, it wasn't like a total blowout, but from the first play, the Ravens gave the ball to Derrick Henry, their running back, who they signed in free agency for, the low, I put in finger quotes, low price of $7 million a season for Derrick Henry this year. First time he gets the ball, 87-yard touchdown where nobody even touches him. He runs right off the right side. I think he got up to like 21 and a half miles an hour, one of the fastest ball carriers of the league. Even if he is 30 years old, he still got speed. Nobody could catch him from the Bills. They were trying, but like Damar Hamlin and some of the other players in the Bills defense had no chance to even catch Derrick Henry or bring him down. So as a Bengals fan, I was sitting there watching that. Derrick Henry ended up getting almost 200 yards on the ground last week, 199. He would have got to 200, but he fumbled at the 1 yard line, and then it got recovered by one of his teammates for the touchdown, Patrick Ricard, their 300-pound fullback. So not quite 200 for Derrick Henry, but Lamar Jackson, obviously he gets his rushing yards, and then when they're not handing it off to Derrick Henry, they're a threat. Lamar is a legitimate threat to throw the ball, but when the rushing attack is so good, it's the best rushing attack in the entire NFL right now, why throw it? Obviously Derrick Henry fumbled, so it's possible that they could lose a fumble, but when you throw the ball, as an old coach used to say, when you throw the ball, 3 things can happen and 2 of them are bad. Like, it could be incomplete, or it could be intercepted, or you could catch it. That would be good. But it's less likely that you'll turn the ball over if you run the ball. So if you're running the ball so effectively, why throw it? So that's how the Ravens are kind of playing it. And Coach Harbaugh, because they were asking him about, well, your receivers aren't getting any catches because all you guys do is run. He's like, well, whatever. We're winning, so we're going to keep doing whatever we have to do to win. And these guys are all team players. And we'll see. That's true. If you're winning, everybody's a team player. If you start losing, some of the guys might start to get, dramatic and start asking for the ball more and getting frustrated that they're not being more involved because everybody feels like they're going to be able to help the team win if you just give me the ball. Oh, we're losing. Well, it's because I didn't get the ball. That's how everybody who's in the NFL should be thinking, because they're all, most of them want to be the best they can be. They think that they're the best player on the field. And even if you're somebody like Cam Taylor-Britt, now we'll get into that later, but Cam Taylor-Britt sometimes talks like and plays like he's the best cornerback in the NFL, but talking and backing it up are 2 different things. So the Ravens, it was weird how the Ravens got off to a tough start with their season. They lost the first game of the NFL season against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are undefeated, the second or only one of only 2 teams in the NFL that's still undefeated right now. So you can't say losing to the Chiefs is anything wrong with that. We remember Isaiah Likely, the tight end, number 80 for the Ravens. He went off in that game, had an amazing touchdown up the right sideline where he faked the guy out, did an Olay move on him. I didn't think he had the wheels to get in, but he got in. Then at the end of the game, he had the almost touchdown catch where just the very tip of his toe was out of bounds, or else they would have had the chance to tie the game with the Chiefs. But then they lost to the Raiders at home, which was so strange when you think about it in hindsight, because although the Raiders had a healthy Devontae Adams in that game, who's their best player, but the Raiders lost to the Panthers in week 3, and then the Bengals went and beat the Panthers. So if you do some kind of, substitution argument, I guess the Bengals should be able to beat the Ravens by the transitive property. Is that what I'm thinking of? So okay, so the Bengals beat the Panthers, who beat the Ravens, the Bengals beat the Panthers, who beat the Raiders, who beat the Ravens. Sorry, Raiders and Ravens is confusing me. So all of that. So you could say, well, then the Bengals should beat the Ravens, but I don't know. I think something, maybe everyone on the Ravens had food poisoning that day or something. I don't know how the Raiders pulled it out, but the Ravens are coming into this game at 2-2, 2 wins, 2 losses. Bengals are 1-3, so they're only one game behind the Ravens in the standings, even though not even on paper, just like from the eyeball test, the Ravens appear to be a much better football team. I know it's like, how could I say that on a Bengals podcast? But the Ravens have Lamar Jackson, who is the MVP from last season. They have a really good offensive line. All of their offensive line is enormous and or super good. They have Derrick Henry, who is, I think, as far as active players go, he's got the most rushing yards of all active players, if I'm not mistaken. He's almost to 10,000 rushing yards for his career, and that would be the 5th player in NFL history if he's able to do that in his first 125 games. And I guess he's also looking for 100 touchdowns, Derrick Henry is. So he's on the verge of a lot of milestones. So he's borderline, at this point, Hall of Fame running back. So you've got that. And the Bengals players in the locker room, they were asking them, what do you think about having Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry on the same opposing team? They were like, oh, if it was Madden, like Jamar Chase was like, if it was a Madden in the video game, that'd be cheating, basically. He called it cop. I guess, is that what the kids say for cheating these days? Calling it cop. He was like, oh, that's cop. If you have Lamar and Derrick Henry on the same team. So I don't play Madden, but I would imagine that would be pretty effective to have both of those guys, because you could either hand it off to Derrick Henry or just run it around with Lamar. And that's hopefully not what it looks like against the Bengals defense, but we'll have to see. One of the things that will help with the Bengals is that they're going to get some of their defensive linemen back from injury. So Myles Murphy and McKinley Jackson had been on injured reserve these first 4 games. They couldn't play, couldn't practice at all, and they were activated from injured reserve this week. And it looks like they both practiced fully all week, and as long as they don't have any setbacks going into the game, it's looking like both of those guys are going to be able to play in the game, which is great news. We haven't seen McKinley Jackson at all. He practiced like twice and then had some kind of knee injury, I think. And so we don't really know what he looks like, but we'll have to see when he gets in the game. We've seen a little bit of Myles Murphy last year. Wasn't a great start from him, but he got the experience. I think, year 2, he's going to be able to make the jump as long as he's healthy. He said he's healthy. He said he feels good, feels explosive. He said he feels better than before he got injured, which is always like kind of like, okay, sure. Like I said, getting injured most of the time doesn't make you more explosive, but we'll see. Hopefully he looks good out there, because the Bengals are going to need it. They have been lacking a lot of depth on that defensive line, namely bringing in guys off of, I don't want to say off the street, off the couch. These guys are Lawrence Guy, Jr. or Senior or whatever he is. Lawrence Guy, this is like his 14th year in the NFL. So he's played so many years. He's obviously made millions of dollars. I'm not going to say he was out on the street, but he came in as a free agent in week 3. And already last week against the Panthers, he was basically starting and played like half of the snaps. I think he might have played even more snaps than Zach Carter, who was a 3rd-round pick for the Bengals a few seasons ago. Speaking of whom, in a related move, since those guys are coming back from injured reserve, they needed to make space on the active roster. So they released Zach Carter. As I mentioned, 3rd-round pick for the Bengals, released. And if he clears waivers, maybe he'll come back to the practice squad if they have space. But that is amazing that already in week 5, they're saying, yeah, this guy we drafted in the 3rd round who we expected to, I guess he was going to be the next man up. The initial plan was to have Sheldon Rankins and B.J. Hill in the inside. All of a sudden, they needed to have Zach Carter as their starting defensive tackle on week 1. Now he's already cut from the team, basically. So a huge fall for Zach Carter. But when you saw what he was putting out there on tape, not really too much of a surprise. And if you're more of a casual spectator, it's not super obvious when Zach Carter wasn't playing well. As a defensive lineman, you don't really notice when a guy's just getting blown off the ball and not making a tackle and the other team is running right past him. But in the case of somebody who has a bad game like Cam Taylor-Britt, where the other team's quarterback seems to be targeting you intentionally and like throwing every pass in your direction, and you're just getting torched and burnt for deep passes, and the other guy is like wide open every play, and the camera is right on you in that situation, it's a lot more obvious to be like, oh, wow, that guy is having a really bad game. But if you're playing an interior defensive line, it doesn't jump off of the TV that like, oh, man, that guy's playing really poorly. But in fact, Zach Carter was playing very poorly. I don't want to beat up on the guy too much, but yeah, it just wasn't working out. But to his credit, at least he put himself in the position to play somewhat, as opposed to Jackson Carman, who looked so bad in the preseason and training camp that they just released him before the season even started. And he was a second-round pick. But I don't know if I mentioned it. I don't think I did. And Jackson Carman actually got picked up by the Miami Dolphins, their practice squad. So we'll see if Jackson Carman has a career resurgence in Miami. But in a similar way, if Zach Carter does end up going to another team and leaving Cincinnati, maybe he'll have a career resurgence somewhere else. But he just didn't have it, like, for whatever reason with the Bengals. He just never found the right weight. He was always fluctuating, like he was gaining weight or losing weight. I don't think the weight was really the issue. It was just there was no intensity, no fight out of Zach Carter's game. He was always just the one getting blocked out of the way, basically. For the Bengals, offensively, they have had ups and downs. Last season, in the game, I think it was week 2. It was the week 2 game they played against the Ravens, where it was a very close game, back and forth. It looked like the Bengals had a chance, and at a critical moment, that's where Joe Burrow threw that interception to Geno Stone, who has now joined the Bengals side. So they were asking players, oh, did you talk to Geno Stone about this and that? And they also, oh, no, didn't talk to him at all. So kind of playing a little coy in that regard. I'm sure they're trying to get as much information about the other team as they can. But that was the game. I think Tyler Boyd had a key drop in that game. Joe Burrow, at the end of the game, he was rolling out, I think on a touchdown pass, he re-injured that right calf. And we saw, I just have the image in my mind of Joe Burrow walking off the field at the end of that game, dropping an F-bomb just because he was limping and he knew that his calf was re-injured. And so in that mind, I was like panicking, like, oh man, he's just going to have to sit out again. He's had a setback of this calf injury. But I'm reliving all the trauma from last season when I think about the Ravens team, because then later in the season against the Ravens, when they went to Baltimore, that's when Joe Burrow hurt his wrist and he was out for the rest of the season. And leaving the field, the fans in Baltimore classlessly were chanting F Joe Burrow. And, you know, here's a guy who's injured for the rest of the season. Fans, very poor taste in Baltimore. But what would you expect, honestly? But yeah, so a lot of bad memories from last season. But in 2021, Joe Burrow played 2 of the best games of his career. First game, they went into Baltimore, shocked the Ravens. I think they won like 41-17. That was when Joe Burrow, they caught him on the sideline saying, "We the big dogs." And that was when Jamar Chase had that amazing, similar to last week's touchdown, where he caught the pass in the middle of the field, bounced off and spun around like 4 different guys and then outran the rest of the entire defense to the end zone. Then in week 15 or whatever it was, the day after Christmas, Joe Burrow went off for 525 yards, franchise record, crazy game where he was just lighting the Ravens up. So good memories in previous years, bad memories as well. Hopefully they get some good memories, get a win at Paycor Stadium. That's the thing that's been missing so far this season. It was great to get a win on the road, but it probably didn't have as much excitement for the fan base as it could have if it had been a home win. So if the Bengals are able to get a win against the Ravens at home, that would be amazing for the fan base to get the excitement back into this season. I think I was going to say Cam Taylor-Britt was talking to the media in the locker room, and Dan Hoare, the Bengals announcer, I mean, so it was weird how it was just kind of a given. Everybody accepted the fact that, yeah, Cam Taylor-Britt played terribly, and everybody knew it, and was just like openly discussing it. Coaches, the players, everybody. And for Cam's sake, he didn't shy away from it and try to deny it. He was admitted the fact that he did play terrible, and, well, you can't really say anything when they take you off the field. Like, normally he doesn't come off the field at all. Then the last game he was only playing like half the snaps, and DJ Turner was in his place. DJ Turner actually played more snaps, and they haven't said who's going to be starting and how they're going to break down the snaps in this game against the Ravens. You would assume that they're just going to go back to status quo how it was before, Cam Taylor-Britt and Dax Hill starting and playing every snap. But DJ Turner played pretty well, so he's showed that he deserves to get more snaps in there. So we may see some more rotation or see how it goes, but it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out for the rest of the season. Everybody could have one bad game, but it was just weird how Cam Taylor-Britt, not that he was playing like amazingly. That's the other thing, is some people were acting like Cam Taylor-Britt was like this total lockdown number one cornerback, Pro Bowl, all-pro type of player. I think that's in his mind, that's what he wants to be, and that's what he thinks he is. And maybe some of these reporters were writing stories about how, like last season, he had a few games where he had an interception. And as Solomon Wilcots put it on one of these shows, he said Cam has a lot of confidence, and he was very fortunate to be in a position where the ball found him, basically. And that's true, where if you watch a lot of his interceptions, it wasn't like he was like making an incredible play. It was like he happened to be standing in the right spot where the ball got deflected or the quarterback's arm got hit or something like that, where I'm thinking about the Arizona Cardinals game, Josh Dobbs last year. He threw a pass that got deflected at the line of scrimmage. It got deflected right into Cam Taylor-Britt's chest, and all he had to do was like stop and run straight forward for a pick six. But if the ball didn't get deflected, the guy he was guarding was going to be wide open to catch it for a first down. So it's not like it was necessarily a great play. It was just something that was fortunate. And sometimes you can have fortunate things happen to you, but it's more about consistency. So like in the game against the Chiefs, there was a long touchdown pass that Cam Taylor-Britt gave up. Basically, Patrick Mahomes threw it right over the top of him to Rashee Rice, who is now on injured reserve, by the way. Rashee Rice got his knees taken out by Patrick Mahomes in a scary collision. But anyway, Cam Taylor-Britt gave up the touchdown, but he also had that interception, diving, one-handed interception on a similar type of play up the left sideline. So if you're an opposing team looking at that, like the Washington Commanders probably did, they're like, oh, well, just don't throw it short, like Patrick Mahomes tried to short arm it in there. Just throw it deep, and Cam Taylor-Britt will be burnt, and that's what happened with Terry McLaurin. Jaden Daniels for the Commanders on Monday Night Football in Week 3 threw that bomb on Cam Taylor-Britt, and he was 2 steps behind, couldn't make the distance up. So maybe in the Panthers game, he was saying that he had bad technique. He was like, oh, my eyes, where my eyes were supposed to be, I was looking at the quarterback too much instead of looking at the guy I was guarding. And he was saying that he was falling for the double moves, basically. I guess that's true, but it's not like the first, Deontay Johnson isn't the first receiver to try double moves. I mean, they do that like almost every play. So you're always going to have guys trying to fake one way and do the other thing. I It was weird. I don't know why he was playing so poorly, but the thing about the NFL is he's going to have to figure it out quick or he just won't play anymore. They will just put DJ Turner in instead of him and he'll be sitting on the bench, and his aspirations of playing in Pro Bowls won't come to fruition if he's not playing. So instead of, I think what he's trying to do is get interceptions. I think in his mind, if he gets a lot of interceptions, he can make it to the Pro Bowl. If he makes it to the Pro Bowl, he can sign a big contract. Because last season, they talked to him about how he missed games due to injury. He missed quite a few games due to injury. This was, when he was on this streak of having a lot of interceptions in a row. Then he got injured, had to miss some games. And then when he came back, he didn't have any interceptions, or one interception, I think, for the rest of the season, maybe, but didn't really factor into any discussions in terms of Pro Bowl or anything like that. And he was saying that cost him money. He was like, oh, if I didn't get hurt, that because of my injury, that cost me a lot of money. Basically saying if he didn't get hurt, he would have made the Pro Bowl. And then, so you get where I'm going with this. So I think in his mind, he's trying to maybe bait the quarterback into throwing him interceptions. But that's kind of playing with fire. And if you don't have the skills, like I think in his mind, he's playing like Deion Sanders back in the day where he could just, try to coax the quarterback. Oh yeah, throw it over here and then I'll pick it off real quick. But what's happening is he's not Deion Sanders. He's not quite as good as he thinks he is. And he's underestimating that these quarterbacks know what he's trying to do. And Andy Dalton, he's been in the league too long to fall for that kind of stuff. So he was just in the mic'd up for the Carolina Panthers. I was curious. I wanted to see what did Andy Dalton say in the mic'd up. And it was a lot of, very positive stuff from Andy Dalton, as you would expect. Yeah, guys. All right. Yeah, let's go. Let's get them, guys. Yeah, all right. And then he was talking to Deontay Johnson. He was like, yeah, that guy can't guard you. Talking about Cam Taylor-Britt. He's like, he can't guard you. We're going to keep going and hit him all day. So you could tell the Panthers had a game plan of, we're going to throw it at Cam Taylor-Britt. In game one against the Patriots, it seemed like they were trying, not necessarily stay away from Cam Taylor-Britt, but they were throwing it more at Dax Hill. But the Patriots don't really have a passing game to speak of at all. So Patriots weren't really throwing at anybody. It was more of, I don't know how did the Patriots beat the Bengals like that? It was 16 points. But anyway, the Patriots didn't go after Cam Taylor-Britt. The Chiefs did a little bit, but now teams like Cam Taylor-Britt said it's on tape that maybe teams can go after him with these type of moves. So it's going to be up to him to prove that he can stop it. Or we may see more of DJ Turner. So that's going to be something interesting to watch how that plays out. One of the other things, we mentioned Zach Carter got released. In previous episode, we talked about how Brad Robbins, another draft pick for the Bengals last season, only a 6th-round draft pick though, so it's not that big of a deal, but a draft pick got released from his team, but that was obvious. He was a punter. We already have the league's number 1 punter, Ryan Rico, playing very well. So you never want to see a career end due to injury, but yeah, so long Brad Robbins. So this means hopefully it's not a similar situation for Ryan Rico, but Ryan Rico is, a mature guy. He went to BYU, so he did the whole thing where they do the mission abroad. So he's, older than a typical rookie player. He's more mature. He's got good head on his shoulders, all that stuff. And so he's coming in. I don't think we're going to see any kind of a drop or a dip in Ryan Rico's performance. He's not going to be reading his press clippings and, thinking he's like an amazing punter just because he had a few good games. Hopefully he can carry the rest of that through the rest of the season because he's leading the NFL, like I said, in punting distance and net, gross and net, which if he keeps it up, they would both be like NFL records. I think he's got like 58.5. Mostly it was because he had like not that many punts. They had the Bengals Commanders game where 0 punts in the entire game for either team. And he had an 80-yard punt in one game. So that kind of skews things in his favor. But still, way better than Brad Robbins. That's the important part. So that's a big weapon that's going to help the defense, though. When you think about it, the defense is going to be aided by having the other team backed up into bad field position. Last season, Brad Robbins wasn't able to pin the other team deep. So as bad as the defense was, it made him look even worse by the fact that the punter wasn't really helping. Now, Bengals defense isn't really that good, but if they can get some good punts, that would kind of help things. In theory. I mean, if Derrick Henry breaks off like a 95-yard touchdown, there's nothing it doesn't matter. But in theory, that would help the Bengals defense. Speaking of special teams, this is another matchup of two of the top place kickers in the NFL. Evan McPherson for the Bengals and Justin Tucker for the Ravens. Justin Tucker, one of the most accurate kickers in NFL history up until this year. Tucker already has 3 missed field goals, 2 over 50 yards, but 1 from 46 that he missed in Dallas against the Cowboys in the Dome. So a very uncharacteristic season so far for Justin Tucker. And some people are saying that the Cowboys' Brandon Aubrey might be the new best kicker in the NFL, taking the crown away from Justin Tucker. So we'll have to see if there's any back and forth long kicks between either two of these teams. The weather for this game, it's going to be, by the way, it's going to be a 1 o'clock CBS game. The weather's looking like 72 degrees, partly cloudy, so rain and wind and weather shouldn't play too much of a role in this game. So hopefully it's going to be a good weather game. But speaking of CBS and AFC North, this is going to be Kevin Harlan and Trent Green and Melanie Collins calling this game. So this is going to be, this is going to feel like what you're used to for a AFC, CBS, Kevin Harlan, a real game. Like, Monday Night Football is great. Panthers win, whatever. Now we got Kevin Harlan. Hopefully it's going to be another one of those games. Because if you go back and watch Joe Burrow's 525-yard game, it was Kevin Harlan calling that game, and he was going nuts every place, every time the Bengals would make an amazing play. I mean, Kevin Harlan is one of the best play-by-play announcers out there, so it's going to be a treat to listen to him break everything down. And then Trent Green is whatever. He just, he's there, but I'm more interested in the calls from Kevin. No offense to Kevin Kugler, but I prefer Kevin Harlan. But I think in terms of other injury news, Trey Hendrickson, he went out last game at the very end with a neck injury. Everybody was very concerned. Then they said it was a stinger injury, and he was limited in the first 2 days of practice. Then Friday, Trey Hendrickson was a full participant. So we'll see number 91 for the Bengals out there, hopefully rushing Lamar Jackson. But he's going to have to pick up, obviously, in the run game, too. And Trey Hendrickson has been surprisingly effective in the run game. But hopefully that stinger doesn't, cause him any ill effects when he's going to go and make a tackle. Hopefully he's got full strength in that right arm and is able to reach out and make a tackle. But B.J. Hill is looking like he's going to be back. So that's going to be a big benefit. Interior defensive lineman coming back from his hamstring injury. He's going to be good. Mike Hilton did not practice at all this week with that knee injury. He kind of looked like he hyperextended the knee, and he was able to play through it. He played the entire rest of the game. We saw him, didn't seem to have any ill effects, but maybe it swelled up on him after the game or something like that and kind of stiffened up. So if he's not able to move and walk around or run around like he typically would, he's questionable for the game. Maybe he was just resting it. We'll see. Tanner Hudson looks like he's going to be able to play, but we'll see if he's active on game day or not. We said McKinley Jackson. He's going to be questionable, just like Miles Murphy. Both those guys coming off injured reserve. Again, we'll see if they are actually activated for game day. But it's just going to be the fact that they get all those guys on the defensive line coming back should be helpful. Sheldon Rankins, doubtful. He did not practice again, so not looking likely for him. But Jermaine Pratt had a little bit of an ankle issue. He was limited, but he doesn't have any designation. He'll be all good. For the Ravens, they are actually pretty healthy, unfortunately, for the Bengals. They don't have any serious injuries to anybody of significance on their team, I wouldn't say. So Ravens are coming into this thing fully healthy, which is, you don't want to say you got them on a down day. Good that we're getting the Ravens at full strength, I guess. But I'm not feeling super optimistic. I mean, the Ravens on the road, they're coming in at about 3-point favorites in this game. So on a neutral site, the betting odds makers think that the Ravens are like 6 points better than the Bengals, basically. It could go either way. Obviously, anything can happen. It can come down to one or two critical plays. But just watching these two teams play, the only good game the Bengals really had was against the Panthers. And so that's a really hard to sell me that beating the Panthers was really the thing that changed everything for this team. So I have to really see it against, a legitimate football team and somebody like the Ravens. It's not going to be easy, but I think it's possible at least. And at the very least, hopefully it's another good, entertaining game. Hopefully everybody stays healthy and, probably there's going to be a lot of points scored. The Ravens and Bengals both have kind of in the middle defense. The thing about the Ravens defense is they're very good at stopping the run. So the Bengals are going to have to pass. That's part of the reason why probably, Joe Burrow has had so much success throwing in recent years is because they couldn't run. So it's probably going to be more of a throwing game for the Bengals. But we did see them have some success running the ball with Zach Moss and Chase Brown last week. Maybe that was just a factor of the Panthers, again, not being very good. So we'll have to see, can the Bengals, will they even try to run? I'm sure they're going to try it at least a little bit. And if they have success, will they stick? If they don't have success, will they stick with it and keep trying, or will they just switch over to the pass? And do they have success in the pass? The Ravens defensive backs, they got a rookie, Nate Wiggins, rookie, and Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton. A lot of talent in the Ravens defense. Roquan Smith, number 0, is out there hitting everything in sight. Kyle Van Noy is, a threat. They got all kinds of guys on the defense. So Bengals offense is going to be challenged in this game. It's going to be a challenge for everybody. I don't think there's any special theme or anything going on for the game in terms of there's obviously no Ring of Honor. There's no everybody wear a certain color. I think it's just a standard AFC North matchup. That's all you need to get excited for this game. So I hope you're as excited as I am to watch this game. After the game, we'll come back and break it down. But one thing I forgot. I was going to mention, I don't know how the team feels about the game going in. I'm not in the locker room, but speaking of not being in the locker room, the NFLPA announced that the reporters, these beat reporters, these sports writers, are no longer going to be allowed basically just free access into the locker room to conduct interviews with players in the locker room. And it's going to be up to the players to enforce this and say, hey, I can't do the interview in the locker room. Let's go outside. Let's do it in a prearranged meeting area for media to conduct these interviews. Because we've seen with people just having, a camera in their phone, basically anybody can record a video on their iPhone or Android phone. And a lot of these videos they post on YouTube, on these channels, they'll have people in the background in various states of undress. They're trying to get changed, and there's some guy with an iPhone recording with video right next to them. And the players, sometimes they'll do it right next to the bathroom or where they're showering. So players are coming in and out of there while they're doing these interviews. It's just a very uncomfortable, weird situation. And the players are, they're playing their music on the speakers in the locker room. So you got all this noise and background chatter and stuff going on that makes the interviews not really as good as they could be. So I'm all for this because from a player's perspective, I totally understand why they don't want these random middle-aged reporters poking around their locker. You don't know who these people are, and they're just there the reporters, they're like, oh, we got to be there to tell the players' stories. They need us to tell their story. Well, the Bengals have their own media team that tells this plenty of stories. They tell stories about Cordell Volson and Ted Karras and Logan Wilson and all these players that they've done profiles of on so many different media channels. They have got videos galore. Andre Josivas is up there doing videos for the team. They're he's doing like breakdowns of his play. So he's telling his story, and then players can go make their own stories on their own social media channels. So they don't need these reporters bugging them, because the reporters are trying to make money off of interest. They're trying to make money off of these stories about Cam Taylor-Britt, giving them quotes in the locker room, and they didn't have it. That's just part of the business. The players aren't saying that they want to not answer questions anymore or hide. And part of that responsibility of being a player is making yourself available to the media to answer questions on a weekly basis. But it doesn't need to be in the locker room next to somebody who's trying to change and like has a towel wrapped around their waist. So I get it from a privacy, just a personal comfort perspective. And they mentioned how during the pandemic, they didn't have any reporters in the locker rooms. And they were like, hey, that was actually pretty nice not having these reporters around. What if we go back to that? And these reporters can hem and haw and complain about it all they want, but these guys are not making a lot of money. They're probably, I don't know what a sports writer makes these days, but they're probably making like $50,000 a year. And yeah, if I'm a millionaire, multi-millionaire, I don't want some guy hanging around with his iPhone recording me all day. Like, get out of here with that. So I totally get it. And it was funny just watching Ted Karras announce it. He was like, okay, guys, so just so you know, you're basically like, you're not allowed in the locker room anymore. This is not an indictment on you personally. This is what the players want. This is what we voted on. And this is what we're going to do. So that's how it's good. It'll be interesting to see what, if any, changes come from this. But the reporters were like, oh, we didn't get any notice. We're just kicked out of the locker room. What? Yeah, get out. I totally understand. So that'll be great. They'll have to figure out a new way to leech off of these players. But speaking of leeches, Mike Brown was recently named to the Forbes 400 list of richest Americans. That's right, Mike Brown, the only Cincinnatian to make the list, and truly one of the most wealthy individuals in all of the country. It was his first time making the list. That just shows you how successful the NFL has been in recent years. I don't know if Mike Brown has any other business interests out there outside of, he's probably got, a stake in some other company somewhere, but they said Mike Brown is worth almost $4 billion with a B, as in Bengals. So $4 billion is Mike Brown's net worth, and that includes the franchise and whatever else he's got. But just keep that in mind when he's not signing these players to long-term contracts, and the players are having to take out insurance policies on themselves, and Mike Brown doesn't want to cough up the cash. But the old saying goes, people who have a lot of money didn't get that way by spending it, right? So if you spend a lot of money, that doesn't necessarily lead to you accumulating a lot of money. So it's not a surprise that Mike Brown has accumulated a lot of the fans' money by not spending it too much. So good for Mike Brown. Operation has been successful, I guess, in collecting money from fans. But let's not think about that as this game kicks off, because that would dampen some of the excitement. So we're not going to dwell on that too much. Let's think about all the excitement and fun we're going to have after the Bengals win this game. We're going to come back and talk about it, break it down. Hopefully we'll break down some more T. Higgins and Jamar Chase highlights, maybe some Andre Josivas, maybe some Mike Gesicki. He can get involved. He had one catch for -9 yards, one of the most weirdest stat lines you'll ever see for a player. The only thing he did on paper was lose 9 yards for the team, and he got body slammed by a much smaller guy, but that's not the point. Anyway, Bengals, big test against the Ravens. It's going to be a hard-hitting game. I'm excited. I'll see you next time. So until next time, I'm going to leave you with a Who Dey and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.